Hey, what's up everybody? This video is going to be on a charger upgrade for the Q1 Hummer. If you're tired of waiting hours and hours for your Q1 to charge up, I found a nice little charger for 50 bucks on Amazon. It's a 4 amp charger, so twice capacity, twice the charging speed of the original 2 amp charger from Qiewa. So if you're interested in charging your scooter a lot faster and half the time you're normally used to, watch on. I'm going to replace the original charger, which is a 2 amp charger, and I'm going to replace that with a 4 amp charger, so you might want to call it a fast charger. It should charge in half the amount of time. Here's the original charger, and as you can see, output 54.6 volts. That's the fully charged 48 volt battery, so it puts out 54.6 volts DC at 2 amps. So that's the original charger. My new charger is going to do the same thing, only at 4 amps. The way you can determine time a charger is going to take to charge a battery is go by the amp hour rating of the battery. In this case, we got a 26 amp hour battery, and you divide that by the amps that you're going to charge it with. 2 amps, so 26 amp hour, 26 divided by 2 comes out to 13. So from fully depleted, about 40 volts, to fully charged, 54.6 volts. It's going to take about 13 hours with this charger. Actually, will take a little bit longer because as it gets to the top voltage, the charger is going to back off on the current. So that would be 13 hours at 2 amps. Once you get to the top end, the current's going to back off. So it probably actually takes around 14 hours or so if the battery's fully drained to get it fully charged using this 2 amp charger. Okay, so then likewise, if you do the math using a 4 amp charger, you've got to cut that time in half. 26 amp hours divided by a 4 amp charger. Instead of coming out to 13, you're going to come out to about 6.5 hours. Maybe add a little bit more because, again, the charger is going to tail off the current at the top end. So with the new charger, cut it in half, about 7 hours from fully drained to fully charged. The other thing, too, is I never fully drain my battery. Most of the time, I'm just trying to make up, I'm 70%, 60%, 50% down. So that 4 amp charger, from like 70% charge to full charge with a 4 amp charger, probably only going to take me a couple hours. So that's what I'm after. Got this idea when I replaced the battery in my Q1 Hummer. This was my son Aaron's. I replaced my battery, 48 volt battery, with a 52 volt battery, which fully charges 58.6 volts. But it came with a 5 amp charger, and that thing charges that battery so much quicker than what I'm used to with the Q1 or with this battery and this charger. I thought, well, why not get a better charger for my son so I can charge his as quick as I can charge my Q1. So that's what led to this, and I found some things on Amazon. I found a charger. Just a couple things about charging these LiPo batteries. Number one, as far as like, well, is it safe to charge at 4 amps when it comes with 2 amp charger? Thing with LiPo batteries, or any batteries probably for that matter, is the current. Again, let's say if you just have one single cell battery and you put 4 amps of current into it, that battery's going to get really hot. These battery packs are so big, there's so many batteries in here, 4 amps shouldn't make this thing very hot. And the thing is, when I first plug it on there, when I'm testing it, this new charger, I'm going to keep feeling the battery. The battery should not get hot or even terribly warm. Might get a little warm, but heat kills battery. So if it gets really hot, then I would say I can't use that charger. I don't expect that to happen because this is a big battery pack. There's a lot of batteries in here, and should easily be able to handle 4 amps. So that's one thing, heat on the battery. If your battery's getting hot, you're charging it too fast, too much current. The other thing is, generally speaking, from what I can see on research I've done with the LiPo battery pack such as this, you should keep it to 5 hours or more from fully drained to fully charged. So, for example, this one's doing 13. This one's going to take about 13 hours, 26 divided by 2. So that's way over that 5 hour rule of thumb. The 4 amp one's going to take about 6.5 hours, still over that 5 amp or 5 hour rule of thumb. So should be safe, should be good. Beyond that, again, I'm going to be constantly testing the temperature of the battery to make sure it doesn't get hot. If the battery doesn't get hot, then it's okay. It can handle the current that you're giving to it. So that's the 2 rules of thumb. Battery shouldn't get hot when you're charging it. And 2, you should be able to go from fully drained to fully charged, and don't do it any quicker than 5 hours. And again, so the 4 amp charger is going to do that in about 6.5 hours. So both those rules we should fall into nicely. Okay, let's take a look at this charger. I got this off Amazon. I'll put the link down in the comments. I can't even pronounce the name of whatever it is, WAOUKS, whatever. It's a Chinese charger, of course. It's got a little manual here. Let's take it out of here. This cord, power cord. That's the AC cord there. Okay, so we got the AC power cord there. And here's the charger itself. A couple extra fuses. And here's the charger. Nice metal aluminum case. You can see it's a bigger charger. It's going to put out more current. And it's 54.6 volts, 4 amps. Now, one thing to notice, our output plug, which is a DC that we're going to have to plug to the scooter, it looks like this. That's not going to plug onto the Q1. The Q1 has this connector on it, of course, and I've now found out this connector is a GX16-3 pin. I'm just going to plug that on there now. I'm currently charging my son's right now because we're going to go riding later until I get this other charger up and running. Okay, so that's our first problem. We got the wrong plug on the end of this thing. That leads into this. I found these on Amazon as well. You can see they're GX16-3 pin silver aviation plugs. I'll link these down in the comments as well. And taking a look at that, you can see it looks pretty much the size of the existing Qiewa one. And there's several different sizes of these GX16 plugs. There's a GX12. It's definitely a GX16 though. GX12 is smaller. And this looks to be the right one. Let's check it out here. And there you go. So it's the same plug. There's a 3, a 2 in the middle, and then 1 on the other side. Notch in the bottom. Same size. Should plug right on there. And it does. So that's the plug we need. Another thing, if you wanted to, you could just take your old original charger, if you're going to do this, and just cut this plug off and reuse this one. Wire that on to the other side. For me, I want to keep this plug intact. Actually, I don't know why, but main thing is I wanted to see what size connector these are, so I really had to order it to make sure. And it definitely is the GX16-3P, which means 3-pin silver aviation plug. Okay, so for my case, since I'm going to use this new plug, I'm going to have to do a little soldering. I'm going to have to take the casing off this thing by removing that screw there. Okay, so I took that screw out and then was just able to pull that whole metal casing off. Here's what I got left, my female plug, which is what I'm after. And on the other side, you can see there's 3 contact points for soldering wires too. Okay, so next thing I want to do, I'm taking a risk here. I won't be able to return this thing should I need to. I'm going to have to cut the plug off of this one so I can wire the wires up to that plug over there. Before I do that, however, I'm going to plug this thing in. I've got a voltmeter, and I'm going to measure the output of this to make sure the power supply is working before I go cutting the plug off of it. Okay, before I plug in the power, I notice there's a switch here for 110 or 220. I have 110. And you can see it's set for 110. If you're using 240 or 220, you'd have to flip that red thing up to the other side and probably say 220 on the other side. Right now it's set for 110, it appears, so I'm good to go. I'm going to plug it in. On the other side we've got some LEDs. LED 1's just going to be your power light, so when I put AC to it, that our LED 1 red LED should come on. The LED 2, I imagine, is a charging light. Probably is going to be green when it's fully charged, or when I plug it in and not have it connected to the scooter. Then when you connect it to the battery, it should go red until it's charged. Let's see how it goes. Okay, I've got AC plugged into the side now, and like I said, like I imagined, the LED 1 comes on red, showing I got power to it. LED 2 shows green, meaning the battery's charged, or in this case, I don't have a battery connected to it yet. Okay, now I'm going to measure the voltage on my output plug here. Make sure I get the full voltage of 54.6 volts, which is a fully charged 52 or 48 volt battery. And I imagine it's just going to be across these 2 edge ones. This probably isn't connected at all, or it's just a ground. So I'm going to measure my probes and my voltmeter. Got my voltmeter here set to volts. And I'm going to take my red probe and my black probe and put one on each side of this plug here. I should get 54 volts. I'm not concerned about polarity right now. I'll measure that again later. You will be concerned about that when you hook up your plug, but right now I just want to make sure it's got 54 volts on it. Okay, so through trial and error, I figured out which one's positive. It's the one on the right side is looking at it. I got my red probe going into that one, the black probe going into the other. On my meter, I'm getting 54.8 volts DC, which is good. 54.6, it says 54.6, and fully charged 48 volt battery will be 54.6. This one will actually charge it a couple tenths higher. Hey, I'll take it. A couple tenths more in voltage. You know, you don't want to overcharge battery, but 54.8 is plenty safe for it. So it's actually going to charge a couple tenths higher than the 54.6. So this is a good charger. I would say this is a good charger at this point. And I'm going to proceed with cutting off this plug so I can solder on my plug that I need for the Q1. Okay, I cut that plug off just using wire cutters there, and strip back the insulation, the outer insulation, the black, and that exposes two wires, a blue and a brown. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. I was looking in the manual, and actually they give you some good information in here. It's nice to see something that's informative and not written, you know, in Chinese English. If you look right there, it says, please attention to DC terminal. Brown is positive, blue is negative. And so from this point on, we need to make sure that we get the positive going to the positive charger input on the Q1 and the negative to the negative. If you reverse those, you're going to blow the fuse in the charger, which you can replace, but beyond that, it's not good to reverse polarity to a LiPo battery. I think it would be all right. You'd probably just blow the fuse in here, but let's not try to do that. So they say brown is positive, blue is negative. It's nice that they tell us that, but I want to verify that for myself. Okay, so I plugged the charger back in. Again, you can see we got a power LED red and the LED 2 green because I don't have anything charging it. Now I've got my output cord coming directly to my voltmeter. I have the red probe, which is positive, on the brown wire. I have the black probe, which is negative, on the blue wire. And they say, just like they say, brown is positive, blue is negative. So I've got brown is positive, blue is negative, and we take a look at my meter, and I see a positive 54.8 volts. So they're absolutely correct. Brown is positive, blue is negative. Now just to show you what would happen if you're looking at it with the meter and it was the other way around. Okay, so now I just switched my probes around. I have the positive going to blue, which is actually the negative out of the charger. I have the negative probe going to brown, which is actually the positive out of the charger. So I've reversed the polarity leads of the meter, and you can see now it's showing negative 54.8. So that's telling me right now that the way I have it hooked up, the red probe is not positive, it's the negative probe, and the black probe is not negative, it's a positive probe. So what they say is true. Brown is positive, blue is negative. I always like measuring these things for myself because you never know. But if one of you guys are going to do this and get this exact charger, I think you can be very confident that brown is going to be positive and blue is going to be negative, just like mine. They would have had to rewire it inside the power supply to be backwards, which, you know, could happen, but I'd feel pretty safe following the brown positive, blue negative if you don't have a meter to measure it like I do. Okay, so now I need to figure out on my new connector where I put the positive and negative wires. So you can look at the front of the connector, you can see there's a 1 on the right hand side, 2 is kind of the bottom, 1 in the middle there, 3 is on the left. Looks just like our old connector from our old charger. So I need to know where to put the brown wire, which is positive, where to put the blue wire, which is negative, on these connections on back. Since I already have a working old charger, the original Qiewa charger, that I know charges scooter and is proper, I'm just going to simply measure the pins on this connector to determine which one's positive and which one's negative. And so let's do that. Okay, so you can see I got positive 54.6 volts on my meter, so I know my red probe is positive, my black probe is negative. And if I look at it, pin 1 is my positive probe, so pin 1 is going to be my positive voltage. Pin 2 is negative, pin 3 is not used, so I need pin 1 to be positive and 2 to be negative. I always like measuring with my own voltmeter just to make sure of all this stuff, but again, you can be pretty confident if you get this exact power supply or charger that the brown wire coming out of it is positive, blue wire is negative, just like it says there. And then you can also be 99.9% sure that on your Qiewa Q1 Hummer side, that pin 1 is going to be positive and pin 2 is going to be negative. Therefore, I need to put the brown positive wire from the charger to pin 1 on this connector, and the blue negative wire from the charger to pin 2 of this connector. So first thing I did is I put my this metal piece that's going to cover it over the wire, so once I solder that connector on, I can slide it back up, put the screw in. Absolutely, you wouldn't absolutely have to do that even. I could just wire it up to that, put some hot glue or something on it, and not worry about it. But I'm going to use the housings just since I have it there. One negative thing about possibly using housing, if you don't cleanly solder your wires on here, you could pull the housing up and short it out. But as long as both wires aren't touching it, you'd be all right. But looks like there's plenty of room in that housing, so I'd have to do a pretty sloppy job to short that out. So I got that housing on there. I'm simply going to solder pin the brown wire to pin 1 and the blue wire to pin 2 on this connector. Again, if you don't have to get these connectors if you're not going to ever use your other charger again, your original Qiewa charger. You could just cut the original plug off, like, give yourself some room, like back here. Strip off the black insulation, strip the insulation off the 2 wires in there. I don't know what color they are offhand, but whatever one's going to pin 1 is going to be positive. Whatever one's going to pin 2 is going to be negative. So whatever wire is going to pin 1 would wire up to the positive wire, which is the brown wire of this guy. Whatever's going to pin 2 on the Qiewa connector, if you were to cut that off, would go to the blue, which is the negative on this guy. Then again, if you don't want to solder, you don't have a soldering iron, you don't know how to solder, you go use your original plug here. You already have 2 wires coming off it. Again, you'd wire up the pin 1 to the brown wire and pin 2 from the original Qiewa connector to the blue wire. If you don't solder, you could just strip the wires and just twist them together, and then you could use wire nuts like this. That'd be fine. You could solder them still if you want to. If you're going to solder them, I'd also recommend using some heat shrink over the wires like this, or some electrical tape. If you don't have wire nuts, you don't want to solder, you could simply twist the wires together. Make sure they're separated. Maybe give yourself more length than this, down this far or something, so you can separate them good. Twist them. In other words, pin 1 of this connector to the brown, pin 2 of this connector to the blue, and then tape them up good with some electrical tape or some other tape. You don't want these to short out or you're going to blow your fuse. So you don't absolutely have to solder if you don't want to. If you're just going to cut this plug off of here, you can just twist the wires together, use some wire nuts or some electrical tape. I'm going to solder mine because I'm using this connector. So I'm just going to put some solder in the pin 1 and pin 2 connections, fill those with solder first. I'm going to put some solder on these wires so they're tinned good, and I'm just going to connect them up to this. Okay, you can see I've got these wires tinned. I got some solder on both the brown and blue wires, and I'm going to do these one at a time. So I filled in solder on the connection for pin 2, which is going to be my negative connection. I didn't do pin 1 yet, so I only got solder on one connection because it'll keep me from getting mixed up. So I'm going to do my negative first, which is pin 2, and I'm going to put my blue wire, which is a negative, and I'm going to touch it onto there with the iron briefly. Don't want to put a lot of heat on this and melt the plastic. That's why I tinned it here first and tinned it there first, so when I hit it with soldering iron, they'll flow together. Okay, I'm using my needle nose vice grips to hold this, kind of like a vice, and then that way I can hold the wire with one hand and the soldering iron with the other, and just touch them together and solder it. Alright, so I got my blue negative wires soldered onto pin 2 there. And now I just got to take my brown positive wire, solder on to pin 1, and again I'm just going to fill in some solder on that pin first, then use my lock grips there to hold it like a vise so I can just solder the brown wire onto pin 1 there. Alright, that should do it. So I got my brown wire now soldered onto pin 1. The brown wire is going to pin 1. Blue wire is going to pin 2. There you go. And that should be good now. So next I'm going to just put my sheathing, or whatever you want to call it, back over the top here. Screw that back down, and then we'll test it. And there we go. Got the metal case back over it, got the screw in there, so it's holding tight. And there's our cord going back into our new charger. Take a look at the old one from the Qiewa charger, and they are, they look identical. You couldn't tell the difference just by looking at the ends of it. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do, I'm going to plug in the new charger. I'm going to double check that I got the right polarity. I'm going to put my positive meter on pin 1, the negative probe of the meter on pin 2, and I should get positive 54.6 or 54.8 volts. Okay, got the new charger plugged in. Looking at my new plug I just put in there, I've got the red probe on pin 1 and the black probe on pin 2. And my meter shows positive 54.8 volts, so we should be good to go. Okay, so I've plugged it on the port, and normally when you plug on your charger, you should plug it into the wall first, then plug it onto your scooter. So I've got it plugged on a charge port. See the cable comes down, back up and around into the new charger. You can see our LED 1, the red power LED is showing we still have power. Now my LED 2, which is the charging LED, has turned red, showing it's charging the scooter. In addition, I can hear the fan. There's a fan in there pulling the air through, because this thing's going to get a little warmer charging at 4 amps than the Qiewa charger, which Qiewa charger actually gets pretty warm too when that thing's charging. No fan in the Qiewa charger. It's actually not a Qiewa charger. They just purchased those and sent them with scooters, so they're not actually making those. But this one's got a nice fan in it. It's a metal casing to sink the heat. And yeah, nice charger. I like it so far. Should be charging at 4 amps. And it's early now. I just plugged it on. The batteries, of course, are really cool, nice and cool. I'm going to let it keep charging. As it's charging, I'm going to keep feeling the battery, make sure it doesn't get hot. If the battery gets hot, then I can't use this 4 amp charger, but it's not going to, because there's so many batteries in here. Again, if I were just charging 1 or 2 batteries with this charger at 4 amps, the batteries would get hot, but there's at least 13 cell circuits. Each LiPo 3.7 nominal times 13 is 48 volts. That's the nominal charge. Fully charged, each one holds like 4.2 volts, but there's 13 battery cells to make up 48 volts, but there's more than 13 batteries in here. There's series, I think there's 13 parallel circuits made up of multiple batteries, and the more batteries you have, that's how you get your capacity for your amp hours. If you guys, some of you don't know out there, your amp hour is the capacity of your battery. So I could have a 48 volt 10 amp hour battery. That's not going to get me as far as a 48 volt 26 amp hour battery. So amp hours rating of the battery is like your gas tank in your car. The bigger this number, the farther you're going to be able to go, the longer you're going to be able to hold your speed, your top end speed. Okay, the next step is just to let this thing run here for a couple hours, 2-3 hours, whatever it takes. See if this battery gets hot at all. I'm 100% sure it's not going to, so it should all be good. Let's see where it is now. Got my battery meter here. 60% right at the moment. So we'll see how long it takes and how warm the battery gets. Okay, so this is working really good. Battery's not even warm. I can't feel any warmth to it whatsoever. So 4 amps is fine for this battery pack. It's still charging. It's been 2 hours and 15 minutes, and I've gone from 60% to 94%. Okay, so that's it for this one, guys. This is a success. 60% to 100% in 2 hours and 45 minutes. Actually got from 60% to 94% in about 2 hours and 15 minutes. That last half hour was going from 96 to 100%. Cost about $60 roughly total. Charges $50 plus tax. The 2 connectors, well, you had to buy them in a 2-pack, but they were $8 for 2 of them. So $58 plus some tax, around $62 maybe total to get this 4 amp charger. Charge a Q1 battery in half the time it takes with the stock charger. And that's about it. Have a good one, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Take care. Check down in the comments for the links to the charger and to the connectors. All right, have a good one. Peace.